So at the time of recording this, by my calculations, we are now 5 days away from the beginning of Stearns' trial. Of course, that is the jury selection part of it. It's probably about a week till we see opening statements. So this video, I'm focusing on Jenn Soto. This is part 2 of my analysis of her Rockin' Kit Kat live journal that she did when she was in her early 20s. If you missed part 1, I will add the link for that down below in the description section so you can go and watch that. I don't think it really matters if you watch that after watching this one because basically the posts are all kind of random. There's no consecutive narrative or anything like that. Now before I start, I do want to say a huge thank you to those people who have bought me a coffee, those people who have given me super thanks. As you know, right now my channel's struggling a little bit to get seen, so every bit of support helps in whichever way is possible. Even if it's just subscribing and hitting the like button, that helps my channel immensely. So if you missed part 1 of this, just a really quick explanation. As you may be aware, this is a live journal that was created by Jenn Soto. It has since been deleted. However, when you put something on the internet, it stays on the internet. And there is this wonderful site called the Wayback Machine, which is an internet archive, and quite often, provided that you have the actual link to find what you're looking for, there's a good chance you may find it on the Wayback Machine. As also mentioned yesterday, because this journal is from a host site, you're only getting a very raw format in terms of what has been preserved. So it is not preserved in the original format of the actual live journal site. And yes, that noise in the background is Mouse playing. I've given up stopping recording when he's being noisy because, as I've said multiple times before, things never get done if I wait for my dogs to stop snoring or if I wait for them to stop playing. So since we are on the final countdown to Stearns' first trial, I do plan on putting a video out each day that relates to this. Will include a few shorter videos which are relating to the people who are involved in this case. Not as in Stearns, but as in prosecution, defence, judge, etc. I won't be streaming the trial. As you know, it's something that is a little bit beyond my capacity right now in terms of my equipment, but I will certainly be in someone's live stream following the trial, probably Grizzly, because as mentioned yesterday, there's 2 other creators who will probably be streaming the trial, but who I disagree with their affiliations or with their choices that they have made on their channel recently. So I will not be supporting them at this moment in time. When someone pulls a stunt where they are outright lying to their subscribers, then it takes me a little while to get beyond that and to see if they have redeemed themselves in any way. It's not something that for me is immediately forgivable. Right, so with all that said, let's jump in and have another look at this Rockin' Kit Kat live journal. So I have looked at earlier posts, and today I am going to carry on from 1st of May 2009. Okay, first up, this is essentially the cover page for the journal with the title, Living is Easy with Eyes Closed. Thank you to the person who reminded me that this actually comes from the Beatles song Strawberry Fields. I have to admit, when it comes to The Walrus and Strawberry Fields, they are definitely not high up on my playlist, so I completely missed that that's what this was. Also, thanks to the people who pointed out to me that Mackenzie basically comes from Father Mackenzie in Eleanor Rigby, which I should have known because, of course, that is one of the decent Beatles songs. So May 1st is quite short. I just want to be loved, damn it. There, I said it. One of the things I mentioned yesterday is that we can see throughout many of these posts that Jenn really was fighting for acceptance. She was terrified of rejection. And someone actually pointed out to me that when it comes to bipolar, that rejection dysphoria is also an issue for people with bipolar. It is definitely something that is experienced by people with ADHD and ASD, autism spectrum disorder. And basically, rejection dysphoria is where any sort of negative comments from people, you just really have this fear of rejection, which means that you struggle to admit when you've made mistakes because of that fear of rejection. You sometimes struggle with relationships because of your fear of rejection. Some people become chronic liars, like Jenn Soto, because of a fear of rejection, and they become manipulative, like Jenn Soto. So I'm not surprised seeing this post here, I just want to be loved. I think she probably was feeling a little bit isolated, and we have seen that her relationship with her mother was far from perfect. And we've also seen in the previous posts that she certainly seemed to be on a bit of a roller coaster mentally already at this point in time, where she was going from highs to lows. And it seems like her highs quite often originate from her being accepted within a group. So, having been at a party and being the life of the party because she won beer pong or something like that, that's when she gets her highs. Her lows seem to be when she gets this sense of rejection happening, or when she doesn't get what she wants. So moving on to 20th of May 2009. I am officially a college dropout. It just wasn't for me, and it took me 3 years to realise it. I think college is 4 years in the US, isn't it? In Australia, it's 3 years for an undergraduate degree. I have a plan, but I'm keeping it to myself for now. I don't need to hear anyone's SHI or negativity. You'll find out soon enough what it is. Only a few select people know what's going on. And so begins Jenn's pattern of being a quitter. Now, it's hard to tell, obviously, with only random posts here and there, if this is directly linked to her mental health, or if her mental health is directly linked to these early failures. That said, based on an earlier post, which was in yesterday's video, I do wonder how many of Jenn's choices have been to please Yolanda as opposed to choices being made because that's what Jenn wants to do. There was a quote in one of her previous posts which essentially was talking about not being able to satisfy what your parents expect of you, and the expectation that you will go to college and that you don't want to drop out because it is expected of you and you don't want to disappoint your parents. So I do wonder if this choice of going to college and the choice to stick it out was just to keep her parents happy, or if she truly was motivated. I think too, given that we can see that there are early signs of mental health struggles here, that would have impacted on her capacity to cope with being at college and to actually complete a degree. She also mentioned in one of her earlier posts that she was anticipating transferring to a university in Florida. So I'm wondering if she actually did that transfer or whether she just quit before she got to that point. Now, I believe that Tyler said that they started dating in 2004. So I suspect that this post here is directly aimed at Tyler. So it's 21st of May 2009. Dear ex-boyfriend, I was looking through an old journal of mine and I found your secret love note. It was kind of cute. You wrote it for me right before you moved to MIA. Is it Miami or help me out here? In 2005. Brought back some nice memories. Thanks for that, but I still sorta hate you. Okay, this is concerning. We know that she did hook up with him a few times after this. He said that she hooked up with him at some point in 2009. And of course, we know that there was Maddie later on when he was already engaged. So that was a few years after this. What I find concerning is her comment, I still sorta hate you. Because Maddie is a spit out of her father's mouth. She looks so much like Tyler. And I can't help wondering if part of the issue in terms of what Maddie went through, in terms of Jen's ambivalence towards her, was because of how much she looked like Tyler. Because it seems like Jenn had serious unresolved issues when it came to Tyler. I suspect that for her it was a sense of rejection and that she resented that. I also can't help thinking that there was probably a bit of jealousy there also, because not only did she try and destroy his marriage before it even happened, but we've heard that she made it incredibly difficult for Tyler to have any access to Maddie. And as you will see in upcoming posts, she also thought that she might join the forces. And I can't help thinking that was her way of trying to be as good as Tyler or one-up him. Particularly given that we can see at this moment in time that she is actually thinking a bit about Tyler. And now we have 29th of May, and this is quite a vicious post towards Yolanda. I know I'm probably the most indecisive person you know, but do you really need to tear me down like that? F, I've decided I'm doing this for me and all you do is spread your negativity around about it. I'm on a strict diet because I need to make weight by Tuesday. You know this, so what do you do? Make a effing steak and tell me how delicious it is. Don't you want this? Yes, I effing do. Why the F would you shove that S in my face? Also, you telling me I'm going to fail doesn't make me feel any better. This is why I moved out in the first place. This is how you are, and I can't stand it. Thanks, Mum, for not being there for me when I need you the most. What am I talking about, really? I've decided to join the US Navy, and she wants me to fail. Thanks for being number one, Mum. But you know what? I'm doing this for me, to better myself, and I will prove you wrong. I can do this. I'll be made official on Tuesday. Honestly, can you see Jenn actually succeeding in the Navy? There's so much to unpack here. So much. What I'm seeing here gives me a bit of insight into what Yolanda is like. And what I think is happening here is that Yolanda probably doesn't realise the negative way that she is interacting with Jenn. Jenn is saying, I know I'm the most decisive person you know. And, telling me I'm going to fail isn't going to help. To me, that sounds like Yolanda has tried to add a dose of reality and probably hasn't said outright, you are going to fail. Probably hasn't said outright, you are so indecisive. But she's probably questioned Jenn about certain logistics. She may have made comments like, look, if you were wanting to do this, you probably should have started trying to lose weight earlier. This is a last minute decision. Are you sure this is what you want to do? And Jenn has taken her comments as being negative comments. Jenn has probably taken her comments as her telling her she's indecisive and telling her she's going to fail, probably because of the delivery from Yolanda. I think that both sides here are not communicating efficiently. From what we know of both Jenn and Yolanda, I do believe that Yolanda was probably just pointing out some practicalities to Jenn. Yolanda was probably quite certain that Jenn wouldn't make it in the Navy and was probably trying to save her the upset without realising that in doing so she was giving her the message that she was a complete utter failure. Sometimes when you have a person like Jenn who is living in a fantasy world, trying to point out to them that they are living in a fantasy world and trying to actually get them to see the world for how it really is quite likely going to backfire because they just don't have the capacity to see the world from that realist point of view. Trying to tell someone who lives in a fantasy world what the reality of a situation is always going to be seen by them in a negative light. In this instance, Jenn has interpreted Yolanda, whatever she said to her, as saying that she was going to fail. And of course, the flip side of that, were Jenn to turn around and say to Yolanda, you're always negative towards me, you're always telling me I'm going to fail, Yolanda probably wouldn't see it that way and would think that Jenn is attacking her. So you can see what sort of relationship was occurring here, in my opinion. Based on what we know of Yolanda, I think that it probably was a somewhat emotionally abusive relationship that existed between her and Jenn, but in fact it was based on Yolanda having a high expectation for what she thought her daughters should achieve, while at the same time lacking an understanding of their own mental and emotional needs. Okay, so now we have 30th of May. Rest in peace, Catherine Lee. I love you. I'll be in New York City by Monday. Should be there until 4th of July. I guess I'll finish out my Navy things there. Grief is a very private thing and I don't feel comfortable commenting on this. It would be unfair on Jenn for me to go into this in any way whatsoever. Seems like she is still determined at this point in time to get into the Navy though. 2nd of June. Question to you all. How to make a decision and stick to it. I've always had a problem with that. I'm finding myself lost again. I'm blaming New York City on it. I'm staying here all of June until after the 4th of July. The whole Navy thing is up in the air at the moment, so is my life. What the F do I want? I really have no clue. I'm once again looking into schools here in New York City, New Jersey. Kathy's viewing is tomorrow and her funeral on Thursday. I really miss her. So the fact that it was less than 2 weeks before her whole Navy dream was up in smoke seems to suggest that it really was just a dream. It wasn't something that she actually really wanted. It was probably just something she thought of in terms of proving something to her mother, a way of justifying dropping out of college perhaps, but certainly not something that she really wanted. She's certainly saying that she's got no clue about what she wants in life. So it shows that the Navy thing was just a random thing out of the blue that clearly wasn't going to work. But of course my question there is, did it fail because her confidence was eroded because of comments by Yolanda? Or did Yolanda make comments to Jenn to prepare her for the fact that she was going to fail at this because Yolanda knew that she would? Like I said yesterday, we're only seeing one side of the story here, so we don't know what the full story is. But it certainly seems that this whole Navy thing was perhaps a hasty decision that wasn't well thought out and may well have been doomed to failure from the start. Okay, jumping to 20th of September 2009. Guest etiquette. I've had visitors this weekend. It's all been good and fun, but I've just noticed a couple of things that have me completely pissed. Dishes. Do them. I am not your maid. 2. What the hell gives you the right to use my loofah? It smells like manly body wash, not mine. 3. This has me boiling. Stuff in her towels. What the F? I know what it is because I asked and they told me. I don't know what you effing have. Even if I wash them, I'm going to be freaked out about it. I'm just not reading that whole bit because that just triggers me just a little bit. Yeah, I won't be inviting them up for a while. I'm just super effing pissed. I will point out that most washing machines have a soak option, and you can buy special powders for a super deep clean of things. But even still, were that me, I would have thrown out my loofah straight away. I'm not a fan of people using anything that is going to touch my body. Even going back to when I was sharing a house with my sister, she didn't really care which towel she would grab of a morning when she had a shower. And quite often I would get up, go to have a shower after she'd gone to work, because I was working nights and she was working days way back then. And I would discover she had used my towel, so I would end up going and getting a fresh one out of the cupboard. And that's my own sister. So I can relate to what Jen is saying here. As for the dishes, well, that depends. If you're in my house, you've cooked your own meal, yes, you can do your own dishes. If you're in my house and you've cooked a meal for both of us, I'm going to do the dishes. There is some etiquette there. But she doesn't explain that, so I'm just going to say I tend to agree with her on all these points. Of course, the irony behind this is that she apparently put up with Stefan being a complete utter slob for several years. Okay, 21st of December. Things I've noticed, new experiences and what the future holds. I sing better in Spanish than in English. Weird. Yeah, it is a little bit. A boy told me I want to kiss you and I started to sing Lady Gaga Love Game. Yeah, not the best way to respond to that. Had same boy tell me I look great but would look better with him on top of me, ha ha. Yeah, whatever, Jen. She really likes people to pay attention to her. I don't need anyone to make me happy. That I must come to do on my own. Oh, that I must come to do on my own. You probably also need to learn a bit of grammar. Of course, I think we can be pretty confident that that is something she has not learned to date. She seems to rely on having other people around her for her own self-worth. Certainly seems like she kept Stefan around when she really didn't need to, because she really does appear to need to have people around her like that. Driving from New York City to Miami alone on Sunday, leaving my dad, and I'm not as heartbroken as I thought I would be. I still love my daddy though. Oh, bingo. This is when she went and hooked up with Tyler, isn't it? Because I think he said it was something like a New Year's Eve thing or something like that, and he said 2009. So she must have been driving to Miami specifically to see Tyler, which is probably why she wasn't feeling heartbroken about leaving her dad. So it seems like she needs to have some sort of male figure in her life to allow her to feel complete. Spring semester starts January 4th and I'm ready for it. Flu, here I come. So she's clearly decided that she's going back to college, even though she's dropped out, tried to go into the Navy, that didn't work out, so now she's going to go back to college so she can drop out of that as well. I'm just wondering who was actually paying for her to go to college and drop out all these times. Maybe it was Yolanda, and maybe that is the cause of the tension between her and Yolanda, in terms of her probably rocking up and saying to Yolanda, "Hey, I dropped out of college, I'm going to go join the Navy now." And Yolanda was probably like, "I've just spent all this money on 3 years of college for you, and you're telling me you're dropping out." Yep, and here we go. Spending New Year's Eve in Orlando with Andrea, Tyler, and somebody else. Might be others. It'll be my first New Year's without my family. It will be a blast. Yes, well, apparently it was a bit of a blast because her and Tyler hooked up at that time. It also makes sense that this would probably be her first New Year's without family, because she would have been 21, meaning that she would have been able to buy her own alcohol. She wouldn't have had to rely on family members giving her any alcohol, if that is kind of standard practice in the United States. I know before I was 18, my mum was happy enough if we were at like a New Year's Eve thing, but, you know, not public, but if we went to someone's place for New Year's Eve and I was in my teens, then she would allow me to have like a glass of wine or something like that. And I know there's going to be people that object to that morally, but in all honesty, we grew up in a household where if there was some sort of celebration going on and the adults were having a drink, we were allowed to have a really teeny weeny drink. And I wasn't one of those teens who went out and had to go and get drunk with my friends every weekend at someone's house, because alcohol was no big deal to me. I had grown up being allowed to have little tastes of it. So it wasn't this, big exciting thing. Okay, 20th of January 2010, spring 2010. My first semester back after a year. So far it's okay. My roommates are super C's, but whatever, I can handle them. The only thing that came as a super shock, and I'm really excited about, is that I got accepted to do a study abroad program in Paris. My dream. I'll be taking an art history class for a month. I'm thinking about travelling around for 2 weeks after the program is done. I hope I have the funds. Right now this is all riding on a loan. That's it for now. Back to my homework. Thack. Well, I think we can be pretty certain that she didn't go do the study abroad program in Paris. And of course the question is, was it because she couldn't get the funds together? Was it because Yolanda turned around and said, "No, I'm not going to give you the money for that"? Or was it because she dropped out of school again before she could actually go? It seems like she had opportunities, but she just didn't really understand that they were great opportunities. She could have made a go of things for herself had she found a way to do so. But it appears that even back when she was doing college, she just was floundering. And yeah, that could be connected directly to her mental health. If she was beginning to suffer from bipolar, then that could have had a huge, huge impact on her success. As for her college roommates, honestly, it just seems to be a thing, isn't it? If you are in America and you go to college, half the time you end up with roommates that you just don't get along with. Personally, I don't think I ever would have coped with a situation if I had to be in like a dorm when I was at university. I was fortunate enough that with both my university degrees, I lived within driving distance, so I didn't have to go through that trauma of sharing a dorm with people that I didn't like. 21st of January, I would seriously les out on Katy Perry, Zoe Deschanel, Penelope Cruz. End. Is this her way of actually signalling to her friends that she's bi, or did they already know that? And can we just acknowledge how much alike Katy Perry and Zoe Deschanel are? Like, honestly, it would be really easy to confuse the pair of them. And here we go with her final post. 19th of February 2010. I need some effing friends. I really feel like Paul Rudd in I Love You Man right now. I've always believed in having a few, but very close friends, quality over quantity. Too many friends can spread you too thin. Seriously, who has the time to deal with way too many friends? Lately, I felt like the few friends I do have are way too busy for me, or just live really far away. We all went to different colleges, moved out of state, and some out of country. It just sucks when some of the most important people in my life live so damn far. My dad, my mum, my man, one of my besties, geez, the few friends I do have left in town and now with their significant other, married with babies, etc. Okay, cool, we all do grow up and do the grown-up thing, but damn, don't effing ditch me. That's probably my biggest pet peeve, being ditched by a friend for their spouse or boyfriend. Christ, you see the man every effing day. I see you once in a while. Don't cancel out on me. I came home mostly to see you, but fine, whatever. And so now I'm at home in my room watching HBO. I've been needing a drink since 2 p.m. and this house is dry. Damn it. I need new friends. Okie dokie. Look, honestly, yeah, when you get into your early 20s, it is that time when you start heading off in different directions from your friends. And if you're not in a relationship and your friends are, sometimes there is that separation that occurs. I had a friend who was a quite close friend through high school and through university, and she married straight out of uni, and it was only a few months after that that they moved to another state, and I really felt isolated after that. So I can understand where she's coming from here. But at the same time, I think her sense of loneliness, her sense of abandonment, again shows us how much she defines her self-worth by who she has around her. She's not comfortable with just her own company. She needs people around her to validate her, to make her feel worthwhile. And let's acknowledge that she's already talking about needing a drink since 2 p.m. So it seems like her substitute for having friends around is to go for alcohol. I'd be really curious to know if she had anyone comment on this post from amongst her friends, because I'm wondering if that's the reason that this live journal ended, because maybe after this people read this and went, well, screw you if you're saying we're not your friends, or maybe they just had already lost interest in her narcissistic rambling. Because I would imagine for someone like Jenn, doing a live journal would be reliant on getting feedback from other people, getting that positive reinforcement. Again, her getting her value, her sense of self-worth from other people, not from herself. As to what she's saying about having close friends, you're having, just a few close friends, quality over quantity. Now, a lot of people are like that, and that's not a negative thing in any way. I must admit, while I did have a few friendship groups going through high school, I did tend to prefer just spending time with my closer friends rather than being, part of a big group. But my observation in terms of Jenn is that for her, wanting to have just a handful of close friends as opposed to a whole heap of friends is probably more about the validation yet again. By having close friends, she's getting more direct attention from them rather than having friends who were, sort of verging on acquaintances who aren't going to perhaps gush over her as much as close friends. For her, it's all about getting attention for herself. It's about getting validation from other people. It's about her inability to find that inner validation, in my opinion. Overall, what I'm seeing from this journal is a sense of entitlement that the world owes her. None of this stuff is her fault, even down to the trying to get into the Navy and her mum supposedly sabotaging that. Now, maybe the way that Yolanda spoke did sabotage Jenn's confidence, but again, it goes to that whole thing of her needing validation from others rather than herself. And when things fail, it seems like she does prefer to lay the blame anywhere but on herself. She also comes across as being narcissistic, even this early on. And like I said, you see her doing that whole bipolar roller coaster right through this journal, where she's on a high one moment and the next she's on a low. So I do think that this was the beginning, or, could have been part way through. But she was certainly experiencing mental health issues at this point in time. I do believe that she was struggling with bipolar this early on in the game. And I think that has had a huge impact on her success and her ability to actually stick with anything. I think Jenn would be a really complicated person to fully unpack. The mental health issues, do they stem from family relationship problems, or are they a genuine, genetic thing, a genuine thing that she was born with, essentially? And how did the way her family related to her affect the way she ended up? I mean, is it that they couldn't see that there were any mental health issues there and they therefore blamed her completely for her failures? Or did they try and help with her mental health issues and she still basically blamed them and saw that as criticism as opposed to them helping? Because, like I said, we're only seeing one side here. For all we know, Yolanda could have recognised that Jenn was suffering with mental health issues. She could have been trying to find ways to help her. We won't know unless we hear directly from Yolanda, although actually believing anything that it comes from many of the people on that side of the family, I would be somewhat cynical. Now, in some of these posts, it certainly does appear that even back then, Jenn was narcissistic and manipulative. But then the question with that is that something that she developed because of her family relations, or is that something that was part of her personality from day one? Because for people who are subject to any sort of abuse, emotional, physical, whatever, one of the coping strategies is that they do learn to manipulate people. And when it comes to emotional abuse, if a person is, a certain type of personality, that can end up with them becoming a narcissist like Jenn is. You get some people who just end up with this extreme amount of empathy for others. And then on the other side, you get people that just become extremely narcissistic. So, the manipulation and the narcissism, is that her personality, or is it because of how she grew up, because of her relationships? And of course, from this, the question is, how did this have an effect on her relationship with Maddie? Because I feel that she was so negative in the way she spoke about Maddie. I do get a sense that she was jealous of Maddie. Perhaps Maddie had a better relationship with Yolanda than she did. But also, for someone who is as narcissistic as what Jenn appears to be, putting her daughter first was clearly not something that came naturally to her, in my opinion. And I think the writing was on the wall even back then in 2009, 2010. Because even back then, Jenn was putting Jenn first. I definitely think that the complexity of her relationship with Tyler had a huge impact on her relationship with Maddie, because as we've all seen, Maddie looks so much like Tyler. And it would have been a constant reminder to Jenn of her failing there, because clearly she was hoping to end up with Tyler. I mean, you don't go and deliberately have relations with a guy who is with someone else, who is your former boyfriend, unless you have designs on them. She probably was jealous of him having a relationship with someone else. That sort of situation of, well, if he's not with me, he shouldn't be with anyone. And now that someone is interested in him, I'm going to be interested in him again. I do think, though, that there's so much here that we don't know. We only really hear Tyler's side of the story. We can tell that there is certainly a lot of animosity between the two of them. We don't know what happened in those early days. We do know that Jenn was still chasing after him for years before she had Maddie, which suggests to me the potential for a somewhat one-sided relationship, that maybe Jenn was more in love with Tyler than he was with her. Seems like he was certainly somewhat ambivalent towards her, even at this point in time, because clearly it's not like these hookups ever developed into anything more. So it seems like, for Jenn it was this whole obsession with Tyler. This is just my thoughts, I could be wrong, but it seems like she was the one who was more obsessed with him. And of course, if that was the case, then there would have been that sense of rejection, which she probably also would have taken out on Maddie. So that brings us to the end of this video. Thanks for listening. Now, as I mentioned at the start of this video, if you are new to my channel, please subscribe, help me to grow my channel, help me to get these videos out there into the algorithm and seen by more people. And of course, you can help me out hugely by hitting that like button and leaving a comment below. Thank you, and I'll catch you in the next one.